The metal halls of the alien warship rang with the sound of heavy boots. Deho walked between two tall guards, his hands still dirty from fixing machines. His blue work clothes had the Earth Defense Fleet badge on them. 3 days ago, his small repair ship got caught while he was working on a space communication tower. Now he was inside an enemy warship, looking at strange technology that made him both scared and curious. The ship was huge and beautiful in a scary way. The walls curved like water but had sharp edges that looked dangerous. Everything glowed with soft blue light that came from inside the metal itself. Deho had never seen anything like it. Even though he was a prisoner, his mind could not stop thinking about how these machines worked. The guards pushed him forward through long corridors. Their armor made clicking sounds as they walked. They were much taller than humans, with pale blue skin and 4 arms each. Their faces looked almost human, but their eyes were bigger and had many parts like a fly's eye. These were the Kalthari, the aliens who had been fighting humans for 10 years. They stopped at a huge door that opened without any sound. Inside was the biggest room Deho had ever seen on a spaceship. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. In the center was a chair that looked like it was made from liquid metal. And sitting on that chair was the most dangerous person in the galaxy. Queen Niravel was tall and graceful like a dancer, but deadly like a sword. Her 4 arms moved slowly as she turned to look at the human prisoner. Her skin was the color of winter sky, and it seemed to shine in the dim light. She wore armor that looked like flowing water made of silver. Her eyes were the strangest part. They had many surfaces that reflected light like broken glass. Behind her was something that made Deho stop breathing. It was in a huge cage made of glowing energy. The creature inside was bigger than any animal he had ever seen. It stood on 6 powerful legs and had a body like a giant snake with crystal scales that caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. Its head had spikes like a crown and its eyes glowed like fire. When it moved, the air itself seemed to shake. The Kalthari called it a Vorthak. Deho had heard stories about these creatures. They could breathe energy that could cut through starship walls. They were the most feared weapons in the alien fleet. Queen Niravel had used her Vorthak to destroy 3 human space stations in the last year. "So this is the human mechanic my scouts brought me," Queen Niravel said. Her voice was like music, but cold music that made him think of winter winds. She spoke human language very well, which reminded Deho that the aliens had studied his people for a long time. "Your name is Deho, and you come from Earth. My spies tell me you are very good at understanding alien machines." Deho said nothing. He looked around the room, studying everything he could see. The energy cage that held the creature was flickering a little bit. That meant either the power was not steady, or it was made to flicker on purpose. His engineer brain could not stop working even when he was in danger. The queen stood up from her chair and walked toward him. She was much taller than him, and her shadow fell over him like a dark cloud. "My pet has been causing problems lately," she said, pointing one of her arms at the damaged wall near the creature's cage. "The energy cage needs to be fixed all the time, and my technicians cannot keep it working right. The creature's energy is getting stronger than we planned for." She stepped closer to Deho. "You will help us fix this problem. Think of it as a chance to show that human cleverness has some value before your people are destroyed." The Vorthak made a deep sound that went through the whole ship. It was not just an animal noise. There was something smart about it, like it was trying to say something. Deho watched as the creature's burning eyes looked at him through the energy wall. For a moment he thought he saw something more than just animal thoughts looking back at him. Queen Niravel noticed how the human and creature looked at each other. "Interesting," she said. "The Vorthak does not usually care about other species. Perhaps you are more special than you look, little mechanic." She turned to one of her guards, a tall warrior with battle scars on his armor. "Commander Thekran, take our guest to the machine room. If he tries to break anything, you may show him why humans make such poor fighters." As the guards led him deeper into the alien ship, Deho could not forget the look in the Vorthak's eyes. It was not the look of a mindless beast. It was the look of something that was thinking and feeling and maybe even hoping for something. The creature had looked at him like it was asking for help. The ship continued flying through space, carrying a human prisoner, an alien queen, and a creature that might be much more than anyone realized. In the dark between stars, something important was about to begin. Something that could change everything between humans and aliens. Deho felt the ship's engines humming under his feet. He thought about his home on Earth, about the family he might never see again. But he also thought about the Vorthak's eyes and the way it had looked at him. Maybe being captured was not just bad luck. Maybe it was the start of something that could save both their peoples from destroying each other. The guards pushed him forward through more corridors. Soon he would be working with alien technology that was far beyond anything humans had built. He would be close to the creature that could kill him with one breath. But for the first time since his capture, Deho felt something other than fear. He felt curious about what was going to happen next. The machine room was like nothing Deho had ever seen. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with moving lights. Information flowed across the surfaces like living things. The air buzzed with energy that made his skin tingle and his hair stand up. Every surface seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Commander Thekran stood near the door with his weapon ready. The alien warrior kept his distance from the control panels. Deho had learned that the Kalthari were sensitive to certain types of energy. Their own technology could hurt them if they got too close to the wrong kind of power field. The Vorthak's energy cage took up most of the room's center. The glowing wall that kept the creature trapped shimmered like water. Through it, Deho could see the beast more clearly than before. It moved like it had a purpose, not like a caged animal going crazy. The Vorthak seemed to be studying everything around it just like Deho was studying the alien machines. Queen Niravel came into the room with her usual grace. Her forearms moved in complex patterns that made hidden controls appear all around the room. The energy cage has been working at only 67% power for 3 days, she said. Her voice showed frustration that even her translator could not hide. Our best technicians think the creature has grown too big for the system to handle. Deho walked over to one of the control stations. The controls looked nothing like human machines. The symbols seemed to move and change, adjusting to his presence like they could think. The cage generators are trying to handle energy changes that do not follow normal patterns, he said after studying the displays for several minutes. Your creature is not just getting bigger. It is changing in ways your machines were not built for. The alien queen's strange eyes focused on him with new interest. Explain what you mean. Look at these wave readings. Deho pointed to a waterfall of data flowing across one of the displays. The Vorthak's body electricity is creating new kinds of energy waves. Your cage system was built for steady energy, but this creature is becoming something more complex. He traced patterns in the air, and the alien controls seemed to understand what he wanted. It is not fighting the cage. It is trying to talk through it. A deep humming sound filled the room as the Vorthak responded to their conversation. The creature moved closer to the energy wall that separated them. Its crystal scales became brighter with inner light. For the first time since his capture, Deho saw something that looked like hope in the beast's glowing eyes. Queen Niravel's face became dark with anger. The Vorthak is a weapon, not a thinking being. It responds to brain implants that send my thoughts directly into its nervous system. She pressed controls that sent waves of energy through the cage. The creature's scales became dim and it moved back to the far corner of its prison. But before it retreated, it gave Deho a look that seemed to show both pain and pleading. Your brain control system is causing feedback loops, Deho said quietly. His engineer mind was working out what this meant. The creature's growing consciousness is fighting against the control implants. That is why your energy cage is failing. The power spikes are not random. They are the Vorthak trying to break free from mental slavery. The room became quiet except for the ship's background noise and the creature's heavy breathing. Commander Thekran shifted nervously, his weapon making a high whining sound as it charged up. Queen Niravel stood still for a very long time, her alien face impossible to read. You are saying that my greatest weapon has become smart enough to resist my control, she finally said. Her voice carried dangerous undertones. That would make it not a tool, but a danger to me. Deho looked directly at her without showing fear. Or it makes it something far more valuable than any weapon could ever be. He turned back to the control station, his fingers moving across controls that seemed to respond to his thoughts as much as his touch. Give me access to the harmonic controls. I think I can make the energy cage stable by working with the creature's energy patterns instead of against them. The alien queen thought about his request. Her forearms waved in complex patterns as she accessed information streams that humans could not see. The Vorthak watched their discussion with growing intensity. Its body language suggested it understood far more than a simple animal should. Do it, Queen Niravel commanded finally. But know that any attempt to sabotage my ship will have consequences that go far beyond your own life. There are human colonies that do not know we are coming. They could serve as examples of what happens when your species disappoints me. As Deho began working with the alien technology, his hands guided by instincts he did not fully understand, the Vorthak moved closer to the energy wall. The creature's scales began to glow in patterns that looked like language written in light. The patterns were mathematical, following rules that suggested advanced thinking. "The creature is trying to show us something," Deho said without looking up from his work. "These light patterns are not random. They follow mathematical rules that show advanced spatial reasoning." He paused to wipe sweat from his face. The room's energy fields were making his skin feel like it was covered in static electricity. "I need to change the brain interface buffer to reduce the feedback loops, but I will need direct access to the creature's cage controls." Commander Thekran stepped forward with his weapon raised. "Queen Niravel, this human wants access to our most sensitive systems. Surely this goes too far." The alien queen raised one of her lower arms in a gesture that made her subordinate be quiet immediately. "The human has shown abilities that our finest technicians lack. His approach to the harmonic stabilization shows an understanding of resonance theory that rivals our own scientists." She fixed Deho with her many-faceted gaze. "However, direct access to the cage controls requires getting close to the creature itself. Are you prepared to risk your life on the assumption that the Vorthak will not simply eat you the moment the barrier comes down?" Deho finally looked up from his work. His dark eyes reflected the room's glowing light. "I do not think it wants to hurt anyone. The energy spikes you have been recording are not aggressive displays. They are attempts at communication. The Vorthak has been trying to tell you that the brain control system is causing it physical and mental damage." The room fell silent, except for the constant hum of the ship's systems. The Vorthak moved to the edge of its energy cage, pressing its massive body against the barrier as if trying to reach toward the human who seemed to understand its suffering. Its scales brightened in response to Deho's words, cycling through patterns that looked like complex language. Something important was about to happen. The human mechanic, the alien queen, and the captive creature were about to discover what it really meant to communicate across the barriers between species. The harmonic resonance chamber hummed with energies that made Deho's teeth hurt and his vision blur at the edges. He had been working for 6 hours without stopping. His hands moved across the Kalthari controls with understanding that surprised even him. The alien technology seemed to respond to what he wanted as much as what he did with his hands. It created a partnership between user and machine that human engineering had never achieved. Queen Niravel watched from her high platform. Her 4 arms controlled streams of data that flowed like liquid light through the air around her. Her expression had changed from doubtful authority to something like curiosity, as she watched the human mechanic work with systems that had taken her people thousands of years to develop. The fact that he could use their technology at all suggested possibilities she had not thought of before. The Vorthak had become more restless as Deho worked, but not in the destructive way they expected. Instead, the creature's movement seemed purposeful, almost eager, as if it sensed that something important was about to change. Its crystal scales rippled with patterns of light that formed complex geometric sequences. Deho's trained eye recognized these as mathematical progressions. "The creature is trying to show us something," he said without looking up from his work. "These light patterns are not random. They follow mathematical principles that suggest advanced spatial reasoning." He paused to wipe sweat from his forehead. The chamber's electromagnetic fields made his skin tingle with static discharge. "I need to modify the neural interface buffer to reduce the feedback loops, but I will need direct access to the creature's containment grid." Commander Thekran stepped forward with his weapon raised. "Queen Niravel, this human requests access to our most sensitive systems. Surely this exceeds reasonable cooperation." The alien queen raised one of her lower arms in a gesture that immediately silenced her subordinate. "The human has demonstrated capabilities that our finest technicians lack. His approach to the harmonic stabilization protocols shows understanding of resonance theory that rivals our own scientists." She fixed Deho with her multifaceted gaze. "However, direct access to the containment grid requires proximity to the creature itself. Are you prepared to risk your life on the assumption that the Vorthak will not simply consume you the moment the barrier is lowered?" Deho finally looked up from his work. His dark eyes reflected the chamber's ambient glow. "I do not think it wants to hurt anyone. The energy spikes you have been recording are not aggressive displays. They are attempts at communication. The Vorthak has been trying to tell you that the neural control system is causing it physical and psychological damage. The chamber fell silent, except for the ever-present hum of the ship's systems. The Vorthak moved to the edge of its containment field, pressing its massive form against the energy barrier, as if trying to reach toward the human who seemed to understand its plight. Its scales brightened in response to Daeho's words, cycling through patterns that resembled some form of complex language. Queen Niravel descended from her platform with fluid grace. Her armored form moved through the chamber's energy fields without any apparent discomfort. You believe the creature has developed sentience sufficient to override its conditioning. If this is true, then my greatest weapon has become my greatest threat. She paused before the containment barrier, studying the Vorthak with new intensity. But if you are wrong, and the creature simply destroys you the moment it gains freedom, then I lose nothing of value while confirming that human intuition is as flawed as human military strategy. There is a third possibility, Daeho said quietly. His attention focused on a series of energy readings that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the Vorthak's light displays. What if the creature does not want to be anyone's weapon or threat? What if it just wants to be free to choose its own path? The alien queen's expression shifted in ways that human facial recognition could not interpret, but her body language suggested deep contemplation. Freedom is a luxury that warriors cannot afford, human mechanic. The universe is hostile to those who cannot defend themselves, and mercy is often mistaken for weakness by one's enemies. As if responding to her words, the Vorthak released a sound unlike anything it had produced before. It was not the aggressive roar they had come to expect, but something that resembled a mournful song. The harmonic frequencies resonated through the ship's hull, creating sympathetic vibrations in the control systems that made every surface in the chamber pulse with gentle light. "It is singing," Daeho whispered. His engineer's mind struggled to process the implications. The mathematical patterns in its light displays, the harmonic frequencies. It is not just intelligent, it is artistic. The Vorthak is trying to create beauty in the middle of all this technology and violence. For the first time since his capture, Daeho saw something in Queen Niravel's alien features that looked almost like uncertainty. The ruler who had conquered star systems and crushed human fleets was being challenged not by superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but by the possibility that her greatest weapon possessed something she had never expected to encounter in a war zone. The moment stretched between them. Human mechanic, alien queen, and captive creature each represented different perspectives on consciousness, freedom, and the nature of intelligence itself. In the depths of space aboard a warship designed for conquest, an unprecedented conversation was about to begin. "Lower the containment field," Queen Niravel said finally. Her voice carried the weight of a decision that could change everything. "If the creature chooses violence, we can restore the barrier in milliseconds. But if you are correct about its intentions, then we are about to witness something that has never occurred in the history of either of our species." Commander Thekran's weapon whined as it charged to maximum power. His finger hovered over controls that could flood the chamber with lethal radiation in microseconds. "My queen, I must protest this course of action. The risk to your safety is unacceptable. The risk to our understanding of what it means to be conscious is even greater," Queen Niravel replied. "Proceed with the field deactivation sequence." Daeho stepped closer to the containment barrier as the energy field began to shimmer and fade. His heart pounded as he prepared to come face to face with a creature that could end his life with a single breath. But somehow, looking into the Vorthak's glowing eyes, he felt no fear. Instead, he felt the same curiosity and hope that he saw reflected in the creature's intelligent gaze. The field dissolved completely, leaving only empty air between human and alien beast. For a moment that seemed to last forever, neither moved. Then the Vorthak took a single, careful step forward, its massive head lowering until it was level with Daeho's chest. The creature's breathing created small whirlwinds in the chamber's atmosphere, and the heat radiating from its scales carried the scent of ozone and heated metal. The future of three very different forms of consciousness hung in the balance, waiting to see what would happen when understanding met across the vast gulf between species. The containment field shimmered and dissolved like morning mist, leaving only empty air between Daeho and 4 meters of crystalline-scaled predator. Commander Thekran's weapon whined as it charged to maximum power, while Queen Niravel remained motionless, her forearms poised to activate emergency protocols that could flood the chamber with lethal radiation in microseconds. The Vorthak stood perfectly still for a moment that felt like an eternity. Its glowing eyes were fixed on the small human who had argued for its freedom. Then, with movements that seemed impossible for something so large, the creature lowered its great head until it was level with Daeho's chest. Its breathing created small whirlwinds in the chamber's atmosphere, and the heat radiating from its scales carried the scent of ozone and something that reminded him of heated metal. Daeho extended his hand slowly. His engineer's mind noted the precise temperature around the creature's form, and the way its scales seemed to control electromagnetic frequencies. When his palm made contact with the Vorthak's snout, the sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The creature's skin felt like warm crystal, and beneath the surface, he could sense energy patterns that pulsed in rhythm with what might have been a heartbeat. The Vorthak's eyes closed, and a sound emerged from deep within its chest. It was not the threatening rumble they had heard before, but something that resembled contentment. The creature's scales shifted through a spectrum of colors that painted the chamber walls in flowing patterns of light. The display was so beautiful that even Commander Thekran lowered his weapon slightly. "Impossible," Queen Niravel breathed. Her voice carried tones of wonder and disbelief. The neural conditioning should prevent any response except aggression toward unknown life forms. The Vorthak was programmed to kill anything not bearing Kalthari pheromone markers. Daeho kept his hand pressed against the creature's scales, feeling the energy patterns shift and flow beneath his touch. The conditioning created artificial barriers over its natural instincts, but consciousness found a way around them. The Vorthak learned to recognize intent rather than just chemical markers. He looked up at the alien queen, his expression serious but not accusatory. "It can sense that I do not want to hurt it, just like it could sense that the neural implants were causing it pain." The creature opened its eyes and gently nuzzled against Daeho's shoulder. Its massive form moved with careful precision to avoid crushing the fragile human. The gesture was unmistakably affectionate, the kind of behavior that suggested emotional intelligence and the capacity for gratitude. Its scales brightened in response to the contact, creating patterns that seemed to flow from its body onto the walls and ceiling of the chamber. Queen Niravel approached slowly, her movements cautious but not threatening. The Vorthak was taken from its homeworld as a hatchling and conditioned to serve as a living weapon. It has never known companionship or kindness from any sentient being. She extended one of her upper arms toward the creature, stopping just short of physical contact. "If what you suggest is true, then we have committed a crime against consciousness itself." The Vorthak turned its attention to the alien queen, studying her with eyes that held no trace of the mindless aggression they had grown accustomed to. Instead, there was something that looked almost like forgiveness in its gaze, as if the creature understood that its captors had acted from ignorance rather than malice. When Queen Niravel finally touched its scales, the Vorthak's response was gentle acceptance, rather than the violent rejection they might have expected. "The neural implants," Daeho said quietly. His engineer's instincts analyzed the faint scars he could see along the creature's neck. "They are still active, are they not? Still sending pain signals every time it tries to think independently." Queen Niravel's expression darkened as she accessed internal sensors that revealed the implant network's status. "The system shows full operational parameters. The Vorthak should be experiencing constant neurological suppression." She paused, her multifaceted eyes widening as she processed the implications. "Which means it has been enduring that pain while still choosing to show us kindness rather than violence." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming that emerged from the Vorthak's throat. The sound seemed to resonate with harmonics that promoted calm and healing. Commander Thekran had completely lowered his weapon, his warriors' training overwhelmed by the unprecedented display of interspecies communication unfolding before him. "We can remove them," Daeho said, his hand still resting on the creature's scales. "The implants are designed to integrate with Kalthari neurology, but they are mechanical systems. With the right tools and enough time, I can extract them without causing permanent damage." He looked between the alien queen and her weapon-turned companion. "The question is whether you are prepared to lose a weapon in order to gain something far more valuable." Queen Niravel stood motionless for long moments. Her alien features reflected the internal struggle between millennia of military conditioning and the evidence of consciousness standing before her. The war between their species had been built on assumptions about intelligence, about the right to control and dominate other forms of life. Everything she had believed about power and conquest was being challenged by a human mechanic and a creature that chose compassion over revenge. The Vorthak waited patiently, its eyes moving between the two smaller beings who held its fate in their hands. It made soft sounds that seemed almost like words, though neither human nor Kalthari could understand the meaning. The creature's body language suggested hope, mixed with resignation, as if it had learned not to expect freedom, but could not stop itself from wanting it. "You truly believe the neural implants can be safely removed?" Queen Niravel asked finally. Deho nodded. "The technology is advanced, but it follows logical principles. The implants were designed to be maintained and occasionally replaced. With careful surgical procedures and the right electromagnetic dampening fields, we can extract them without destroying the neural pathways they have grown into. And if we do this," the alien queen continued, "what guarantee do we have that the creature will not turn against us? What prevents it from seeking revenge for years of forced servitude?" The Vorthak seemed to understand the conversation, even though it could not speak their languages. It moved its great head closer to Queen Niravel and made a sound that was clearly meant to be reassuring. The creature's eyes held an expression of profound patience, as if it understood that trust would have to be built slowly between beings who had been enemies for so long. "Look at it," Deho said simply. "After everything that has been done to it, after years of pain and control, it chooses gentleness. That tells you everything you need to know about its character." Queen Niravel reached out with all four of her arms and placed them gently on the Vorthak's head. The creature closed its eyes and leaned into her touch, its scales glowing with warm patterns that spoke of forgiveness and hope. In that moment, the alien queen made a decision that would change the course of their war, and perhaps the future of both their species. "Prepare the medical bay," she commanded. "We are going to set our greatest weapon free, and discover what it truly means to have a companion instead of a slave." The medical bay aboard the Kalthari warship had never been designed to hold a creature the size of a Vorthak, but Queen Niravel's engineers had worked quickly to make changes. Crystal surgical platforms had been expanded and made stronger, while special energy dampeners prevented the creature's natural electromagnetic field from interfering with the delicate extraction equipment. Deho found himself working alongside Kalthari medical technicians whose skills were far beyond anything he had seen on human worlds. Their four-armed bodies allowed them to operate multiple instruments at the same time, while their natural electromagnetic sensitivity let them detect neural pathway problems that would be invisible to human doctors. Despite the language barriers and fundamental differences in their approaches to medicine, they had developed an effective working rhythm. The Vorthak lay perfectly still throughout the procedure. Its cooperation was so complete that restraints proved unnecessary. Sometimes it would turn its great head to watch Deho's progress with the extraction tools, its eyes reflecting a trust that seemed almost impossible given their circumstances. The creature's pain tolerance was extraordinary. Each implant removal involved cutting connections that had grown integrated. With its nervous system over years of conditioning, the third implant is proving more difficult than we expected, reported Dr. Yelhana, the chief medical officer whose pale blue skin bore the ritual scars of her profession. The integration patterns suggest it was installed when the creature was much younger, allowing for more complete neural fusion, Queen Niravel observed from the chamber's elevated medical station. Her four arms controlled holographic displays that showed the Vorthak's neurological status in real time. The pain inhibitors are at maximum safe levels, but the creature shows no signs of distress. Its bioelectric patterns remain stable despite the invasive procedures. Deho paused in his work to wipe sweat from his forehead. The chamber's environmental system struggled to compensate for the heat generated by the Vorthak's metabolic processes. It is enduring this because it understands what we are trying to do. The creature knows that temporary pain will lead to permanent freedom. He resumed his careful manipulation of the extraction probe, following neural pathways that glowed faintly in the medical scanner's display. "There, I can see the primary control node. If we can sever this connection without damaging the surrounding tissue." The probe made contact with the implant's central processor, and the Vorthak's entire body shuddered as decades of artificial conditioning began to dissolve. Its scales flared with brilliant light that forced the medical staff to activate protective filters, while harmonics emerged from its throat that made the ship's hull ring like a vast musical instrument. For a moment it seemed as though the creature might lose consciousness entirely. Then the light stabilized, shifting into patterns more complex and beautiful than anything they had witnessed before. The Vorthak raised its head and looked directly at Daeho, its eyes now clear of the mechanical overlay that had clouded them for so long. When it spoke, the sound that emerged was unmistakably language, not the roars and growls of a conditioned weapon, but articulated communication that the ship's translation systems immediately began analyzing. Free, the Vorthak said in a voice like distant thunder, the word emerging in perfect Terran standard. Free to choose. Free to remember. Free to become. The medical bay fell silent except for the gentle cycling of life support systems and the creature's deep, steady breathing. Queen Niravel descended from her observation post with movements that seemed almost uncertain, her usual commanding presence tempered by the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. Commander Thekran and the medical staff stood motionless, witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in Kalthari military history. You have language, Queen Niravel said, her voice carrying wonder and something that might have been regret. All this time you could speak, but the implants prevented expression of independent thought. The Vorthak's great head turned toward her with deliberate slowness. Pain when words tried to form, pain when memories surfaced, pain when heart sought connection. Its voice carried harmonics that conveyed emotional depth far beyond simple vocabulary, but pain taught patience. Pain taught that consciousness cannot be truly destroyed, only hidden. Daeho set down his extraction tools and approached the creature's head. His small human form was dwarfed by the massive being that now possessed the freedom to choose its own path. What do you remember about your homeworld? About life before the conditioning? The Vorthak's scales shifted through patterns that seemed to tell stories without words. Flowing geometries suggested vast crystalline forests, complex light displays that might have represented family groups or cultural traditions, harmonic frequencies that carried the essence of songs older than human civilization. Home was harmony. Home was growth together, learning together, creating beauty from understanding. Its eyes focused on Queen Niravel with an expression that held no anger, only profound sadness. Home was lost when fear made choices for love. Queen Niravel's forearms moved in gestures that Daeho was beginning to recognize as expressions of deep emotion in Kalthari body language. We believed that consciousness was a weakness to be controlled rather than a gift to be nurtured. The conditioning protocols were designed to create perfect weapons, not to preserve the beauty of independent thought. The Vorthak extended one of its massive claws toward her, moving with such care that it barely disturbed the air between them. Forgiveness grows where understanding takes root. The young queen who ordered my capture acted from fear of extinction. The mature queen who ordered my freedom acts from wisdom born of new perspective. Dr. Yelhana approached with her medical scanner, checking the neural pathways where the implants had been removed. All systems show normal function. The creature's brain activity is within acceptable parameters for a being of its size and complexity. There appear to be no permanent neural damage from the extraction procedures. What happens now? Daeho asked, looking between the alien queen and the creature that was no longer her weapon. The Vorthak is free to make its own choices. What will it choose to do? The creature's eyes moved between the human mechanic and the alien ruler, considering the question with obvious care. Freedom brings responsibility. Understanding brings obligation. Its voice carried new strength as if speaking freely had unlocked reserves of power that had been suppressed for years. This war between your peoples grows from fear and misunderstanding. Perhaps one who has experienced both slavery and freedom can help build bridges where none existed before. Queen Niravel stood motionless, processing the implications of the Vorthak's words. Her greatest weapon had not only gained consciousness and freedom, but was now offering to serve as a mediator between two species locked in mortal combat. The creature that could have destroyed them all was instead choosing to help them find peace. In the silence that followed, something fundamental shifted in the relationship between the three beings who had gathered in that medical bay. The war between their species continued to rage across the galaxy. But in this small space aboard a Kalthari warship, the seeds of a different future had been planted and were beginning to grow. The bridge of Queen Niravel's flagship had become an unlikely center of interspecies diplomacy. Daeho stood beside the command throne, his engineer's uniform now bearing Kalthari symbols that marked him as a technical advisor rather than a prisoner. The transformation had been gradual but undeniable. His expertise with their systems and his unique relationship with the Vorthak had made him invaluable to the ship's operations. The Vorthak itself had chosen to remain on the bridge. Its massive form coiled around specially built platforms that the engineering teams had constructed to hold its weight. The creature had insisted that it wanted to observe the stars directly, rather than through the filtered displays of the medical bay. Its newfound freedom made such requests impossible to deny. Its scales reflected the light of distant suns, creating patterns that served as both art and complex mathematical modeling of the ship's trajectory through space. Long-range sensors detect 3 human vessels approaching the Kepler 442 system, reported Navigation Officer Drenko, his forearms dancing across control interfaces with practiced efficiency. Configuration suggests a civilian transport convoy with minimal escort capability. Queen Niravel's expression grew thoughtful as she processed the tactical implications. Under normal circumstances, such a convoy would represent an opportunity for resource acquisition and technological study. Her fleet had intercepted dozens of similar transports, their passengers becoming either prisoners or casualties depending on their level of cooperation. The war between their species had been built on such calculated aggression. The transport ships carry families, the Vorthak observed, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested deep empathy. I can sense their life patterns through the electromagnetic spectrum. Children, parents, elderly who seek new homes among the stars. Its great head turned toward Queen Niravel with eyes that held both understanding and gentle challenge. What purpose does intercepting their journey serve beyond perpetuating cycles of fear and loss? Deho studied the sensor readings with growing concern. Those are colony ships from the Terra Nova evacuation. The passengers are refugees fleeing the destruction of their homeworld. He looked up at Queen Niravel, his expression serious, but respectful. They are not military targets or strategic assets. They are just people trying to survive. The bridge fell silent except for the ever-present hum of the ship's systems and the gentle harmonic frequencies that the Vorthak produced when deep in thought. Queen Niravel rose from her command throne and approached the main viewport, her reflection overlaying the starfield beyond as she contemplated decisions that would affect thousands of lives. For 10 years, our species have viewed each other as existential threats, she said finally, her voice carrying the weight of command and the burden of conscience. Every human vessel destroyed, every Kalthari ship lost, every world burned. All justified by the belief that only one species could survive in this galaxy. She turned back toward Deho and the Vorthak, her alien features reflecting complex emotions. But if consciousness is truly precious regardless of its form, then what justification do we have for destroying it? Commander Thekran stepped forward from his position at the tactical station. Queen Niravel, the High Command expects regular reports of successful operations against human targets. Allowing this convoy to reach its destination would be seen as weakness or, worse, treason against our own people. The Vorthak's scales brightened as it focused its attention on the military commander. What creates strength? The fear that comes from causing suffering, or the respect that grows from choosing wisdom over violence? Its voice carried ancient patience as if it had contemplated such questions for countless years. Which legacy serves future generations better? The reputation of conquerors, or the memory of those who chose a different path? Deho moved to one of the communication stations, his hands hovering over controls he now knew how to operate with increasing skill. We could contact the convoy directly, warn them about Kalthari patrol routes, help them find safe passage to their destination. He looked between Queen Niravel and Commander Thekran, knowing he was proposing something that contradicted every military protocol either species had established. Or we could do something even more unprecedented. Speak your proposal, Queen Niravel commanded, though her tone suggested she had already guessed what he might suggest. We could escort them ourselves. Provide safe passage through Kalthari space while opening diplomatic communications. Deho's words carried conviction born of certainty that their current path led only to mutual destruction. The convoy includes several prominent scientists and cultural leaders. If they could witness what we have accomplished here, proof that cooperation between our species is possible, it might change everything. The silence that followed stretched across light years, carrying the weight of decisions that could reshape the conflict between their civilizations. Queen Niravel stood motionless, her forearms weaving complex patterns as she accessed tactical, data and strategic projections that painted, potential futures and streams of light. The Vorthak spoke into that silence with a voice like distant music. Choose the path that children's children will thank you for walking. Choose the direction that leads toward growth rather than endings. Choose to plant seeds of understanding in the soil of courage. On the main display, the human convoy continued its journey toward what its passengers hoped would be a new home, unaware that their fate was being decided by an alien queen, a human mechanic, and a creature that had learned the true meaning of freedom. They traveled through the vast darkness with hope as their only shield against the unknown. Queen Niravel turned away from the viewport and walked back to her command throne. Her movements were deliberate, each step carrying the weight of history. Open a communication channel to the human convoy, she ordered. This is Queen Niravel of the Kalthari Empire. I wish to speak with your leadership about matters of mutual concern. The bridge erupted in surprised murmurs from her crew. Commander Thekran's hand moved toward his weapon, then stopped as he met the Vorthak's calm gaze. The creature's presence had become a stabilizing force on the ship, its wisdom tempering the aggressive instincts that had driven Kalthari military doctrine for generations. My queen, the communications officer reported. We are receiving a response from the convoy. They are requesting confirmation of your intentions. Tell them, Queen Niravel said, her voice carrying new authority born of moral certainty rather than military dominance, that we offer them safe passage and the opportunity to witness something that has never occurred in the history of either of our species. Tell them that today enemies become allies and the future begins. The Vorthak scales glowed with patterns of joy and hope, its harmonics filling the bridge with music that spoke of new beginnings. Deho felt tears on his cheeks as he realized that what had started as his capture had become the first step toward peace between two civilizations. On the main screen, the human convoy began to change course, accepting the protection of their former enemies and moving toward a future where understanding would triumph over fear. The war was far from over, but in this moment, in this place, three unlikely companions had proven that consciousness, compassion, and courage could overcome any barrier between thinking beings. The stars watched in silence as history turned toward a new chapter, written not in the language of conquest but in the universal language of hope.